even with like Hamas, where it's like you're showing a picture of kids dying, and I get so many comments of, "What about Hamas?" And I'm like, "Bro, you think this 3-year-old kid that just got bombed and killed is Hamas?" Like people just look for keywords, just like trigger words that will get other people, trolls and stuff. Honestly, trolls that are literally just want to just comment that on your thing, just so they could get a rise up out of you or something like that. Mm-hmm. But like I said, it's
Belal Muhammad is a Hamas supporter. He retails Hamas propaganda in the MMA community.
Hamas, terrorists. And I'm like, bro, it has nothing to do with that right now.
Belal Muhammad doesn't want to talk about Hamas. Hamas is beside the point, which is the kids.
People are nuts. Like, it's not. It's literally has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with like humanity. Like,
so here's an example from his Instagram page about Susie Eshkuntana. The picture comes from this Guardian article. The caption reads that the house collapsed after an Israeli airstrike. After, not because. And take it or leave it, but according to the Israeli military, a collapsed Hamas tunnel running under the foundation brought down the house. This could very well be. Palestine is riddled with tunnels. Visitors approaching Rafah can be forgiven for thinking they have stepped back in time to the 1948 Nakba. On the southern reaches of the town, the horizon is interrupted by hundreds of white tents flapping in the wind. Instead of dispossessed refugees, the tents shelter the mouths of hundreds of tunnels, which for the past 5 years have played a critical role in providing a lifeline for Gazans hit by a punishing siege. The ground that Israel leveled in 2004 to create a barren corridor separating Gaza from Egypt is today abuzz with activity on and under the surface as Gazans operate a tunnel complex that has become the driver of Gaza's economy and the mainstay of its governing Palestinian Islamist movement, Hamas.
Hamas keeps a watchful eye over the tunnels.
Well, they're checking what we're doing, right?
Did you know that Hamas regulates the tunnels? They are Hamas's baby. If one collapses, they are responsible.
Hamas, terrorists. I'm like,
apparently, Belal Muhammad cares about Sheikh Jarrah. The Palestinians have no legal claim to this land, and that is their problem. But then Hamas comes along, starts shooting rockets, and people get killed.
By the evening, it was business as usual over Gaza. Hamas and the small armed groups had never stopped firing at Israel. Some missiles were intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome defense system. One that got through caused the first Israeli death of the conflict. Other rockets fell short, dropping back into Palestinian territory.
Misfired rockets are a real problem. The article Belal referenced in The Guardian talks about the danger of misfired rockets. What are the rockets supposed to accomplish anyway? Did Hamas ask the people if they wanted their leaders to put them in the crossfire again? This rocket business has been going on for years, and only Hamas benefits.
Hamas is an Islamic organized crime ring. Shielding themselves behind the Palestinians, Hamas leaders commit attacks followed by reprisals, resulting in devastation, which leads to appeals for international aid, which is then stolen, diverted, and used to rearm. This cycle of violence has made Hamas leaders wealthy, such as in the cases of Musa Abu Marzouk and Khalid Mishal, who are both billionaires.
Einstein never said this, and isn't this the very definition of propaganda, a lie wrapped in truth? It is strange that Belal doesn't want to talk about Hamas when he is so full of their propaganda. People have addressed the shrinking Israel map before. Belal could have researched this and maybe added to the conversation, but remember, he's not looking for a conversation.
What I am about to show you is one of the most commonly used and visually striking pieces of anti-Israel propaganda. Here are 4 maps purporting to show a Palestinian loss of land. It's important to break this image down, tackling the falsehoods one by one. First, we need to be clear that the term Palestinian, as referring to Arabs living in this area, was invented by Yasser Arafat in 1964. Prior to that, these people were known only as Arabs. Even in the 1947 UN partition plan, there's no mention of Palestinians, but rather, respectively, the Jewish population and the local Arab population. And this makes sense, because there's never been a Palestinian state. In the same vein, there's never been Palestinian land. Rather, the land was part of the British Mandate for Palestine, a geographical area controlled by Britain after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire at the end of the First World War. The first map purports to show the whole of Palestine in 1946. The flag you see here was actually first adopted in 1964 by the PLO. The vast majority of the area is shaded green to represent the 1 million Arabs living there, whilst the white spots represent 500,000 Jewish inhabitants. This map conveniently omits the area of the Mandate which, on the 15th of May 1923, Britain severed to create an independent Transjordan, handing 3/4 of the British Mandate. This created the Hashemite Kingdom, which we know today simply as Jordan, a Muslim Arab state with a population of 70% Arab Palestinian descendants. By refraining from depicting the whole of the British Mandate, the propagandist presents it as 1/4 of its actual size, and falsely represents it as Palestinian land. The second map suggests that the UN partition plan, which ended the British Mandate, established Jewish land and Palestinian land. While the partition plan called for the creation of a Jewish state and a state for the local Arab population, the Arabs rejected the plan. They refused to accept the existence of a state for the Jews, so a second state, after Jordan, for the local Arab population never materialized. Instead, in 1948, within hours of its declaration of independence, 7 Arab countries attacked Israel with the intent of annihilating it. The end of that war, in which the fledgling Jewish state defended itself and fought for its very survival, brings us to the third map. Often called the 67 borders, these are neither borders nor do they date from 67. This is in fact the armistice line of 1949, simply reflecting which entity controlled what land when the fighting stopped. Map number 3 represents Gaza and the West Bank as Palestinian land. This is again a falsehood. The West Bank was land occupied by Jordan from 1948 to 67 and ethnically cleansed of its Jews. Gaza was occupied by Egypt from 49 to 67. Still today, Egypt holds parts of the Strip from Rafah to the south. Again, the attempt to present the green shading as Palestinian land is categorically false. The fourth map shows what it terms Palestinian land today and implies that this is what remains of a larger original territory. This is not what is left. Rather, it is the only land which Palestinians have ever controlled. In the Oslo Accords, the green areas within the West Bank were ceded by Israel to the PLO in exchange for peace. Sadly, the Palestinian end of that bargain was never upheld. Terror attacks against Israeli civilians and their property have continued in the 25 years since then, funded and encouraged by the PLO. Now, there is an additional falsehood propagated by these maps. Let's look at the first map, with its green depiction of 1 million Arabs in 46. Where is the representation of these Arabs in the last map? The propagandist wants you to believe that they were ethnically cleansed. In reality, today nearly 2 million live across Israel as Israeli citizens. Yet there's no green shading outside of the West Bank and Gaza. Another blatant falsehood. Sadly, these misrepresentations are widespread. Just do a Google image search to see how pervasive they are. These false maps are relied on as fact by respected journalists and academics worldwide, who themselves have been fooled into believing them. They in turn unwittingly spread the propaganda themselves. We cannot allow these lies to continue. Share this clip and spread the truth about these maps. I'm Kiki Hausdorff.
Affinity with Hamas is a family affair for Belal Muhammad. His sister is an officer in the American Muslims for Palestine. The AMP is the second coming of the Islamic Association for Palestine, a Hamas front. The leadership of the IAP and the AMP is identical. Only the name is changed. The IAP changed their name after a jury found the IAP liable in the Hamas drive-by assassination of David Boyne. But a judge has given the green light for the Boyne family to continue their lawsuit against the IAP, now AMP. And here is the head of the AMP giving an award to the former head of Hamas military in the U.S., Mohammed Saleh. In Will Harris's Anatomy of UFC 263, Belal Muhammad's brother praises Belal for all he has done for, quote, our country, unquote, meaning Palestine. I hate to spoil the party, but Palestine is not a country. They have no way to support themselves with their major products being limestone and olives. They have no tech sector like Israel because Hamas is literally running the country into the ground.
يعني أحيانا بتكون متعة وأحيانا الواحد بيكون خايف جدا ودائما الواحد بيكون خايف يعني قبل ما ينزل حتى يصلي وبتشاهد هو تحت حتى لو صار معه إيش يعني الله يلطف فيه والله يعني هي شغلة خطيرة جدا يعني وإحنا مسمينها يعني مقبرة الأحياء هي.
شكرا جدا شكرا. But sitting at the end of those tunnels is like pure torture. If anybody can teach you about anxiety control, it must be those boys like sitting at the end of the tunnel because like there's no oxygen left there. And like the light goes out constantly and like...
Wall's brother also brings up Bella Hadid. I don't know if you know Bella Hadid. Really famous people are getting targeted on the New York Times. Well, Bella Hadid is a supermodel who also likes to wear the hijab at Hamas rallies and then retail Hamas propaganda on social media to be popular.
Palestine will be free! Palestine will be free! Palestine will be free!
And, like Belal Muhammad, she doesn't talk about Hamas either.
Palestine will be free!
Well, one day, someone confronted the social media influencer about what she was doing with a full-page ad in the New York Times. She didn't like that. Remember, Palestinians, like Bella and Belal, don't want a conversation.
All good. I mean, free Palestine. Just free Palestine. Really, I don't know. Because you know, because it's free Palestine.
As recently as the Sato fight, Belal Muhammad wears the keffiyeh, which came from super bigot Hajjamin al-Husseini. It was part of al-Husseini's anti-Jewish Arab revolt. The Mufti turned the traditional headdress into part of the uniform of the anti-Jewish insurgency. Amin al-Husseini had FaceTime with Adolf Hitler. He helped raise forces for the Third Reich. And here he is, taking in the sights at a Nazi concentration camp.
Now, years ago, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem was known to associate with Nazi German leader Adolf Hitler. He even played a role in pushing the Nazis to exterminate the Jewish population of Europe. Well, now, the Kedem auction house has published 6 previously unseen photos of the religious and political leader in Nazi Germany, which go further in retelling the story of this important moment in time. There are already photos of the Grand Mufti, Hitler, and Himmler circulating the internet, but the Nazis in these photos are less high profile. Kedem speculates that they include Arthur Seyss, Inquart, the Austrian Reichskommissar of the occupied Netherlands, Fritz Groba, Germany's ambassador to Iraq, and Iraqi politician Rashid Ali al-Gailani. Allegedly, the Grand Mufti's ties to the Nazis pressured the British to oppose Zionism during World War II under fear that the Arabs would side with the Axis powers. The Mufti even reportedly once told Hitler that the Arabs are Germany's natural friends because they have the same enemies as Germany, namely the Jews.
Palestine, free Palestine. Man, Assalamu alaikum! Woo! I love Abu Dhabi. Man, it's been amazing time here. I knew I had to come out and put on a show for my fans. I got my first submission, all this love in the crowd. Alhamdulillah. Wouldn't be nothing without God. Allahu Akbar!
Honestly, they need somebody like really to step up and like put an end to it. So like, you can't have the president of the United States saying, well, they have a right to defend themselves from Hamas.